Hi, my name is Chris. I'm your resident internet angry person. I have an MA in anthropology, a lot of rage, and I'm pretty much obsessed with decolonizing, decoloniality, and all of that stuff. So I've been studying that for about 5 years or so. And today I want to talk about solidarity in the global south. Now, for a little bit of a backgrounder, and this one I'm taking from Wikipedia because it's the easiest source and it also kind of frames it quite well. The global north and the global south, and I quote, are terms that denote a method of grouping countries based on their defining characteristics with regards to socioeconomics and politics. The global south broadly comprises Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Asia, which excludes Israel, Japan, and South Korea, and Oceania, which also excludes Australia and New Zealand. Now, it goes on to talk about standards of living, poverty, and all of that other stuff, but we're going to skip over that and make a note about how the global south is essentially a bunch of former colonies. And that's the thing. There are a lot of conversations being had, a lot of papers being written by some really good and really smart thinkers from the global north around decolonizing and decoloniality, particularly with respect to decoloniality in a settler colonial setting, such as the US, Australia, and New Zealand. But when it comes down to it, how do we decolonize in the global south? Officially speaking, we've already decolonized in the sense that we are no longer colonies, but in a lot of other senses, like, for example, economically. My home country, the Philippines, for instance, is very much still economically dependent on the US, as well as politically dependent. We have several military bases of the US here in our country. I'm not going to go into the details around the geopolitics of that because it's really, I'll be here for a while, essentially. But we can also take into consideration places like Brazil. So Brazil, former colony, and in a manner of speaking, kind of a settler colony in that a lot of Brazilians who are of white origin or of European ancestry came there as settlers, and they also brought along enslaved and kidnapped peoples from Africa. And the situation there is different from, say, the situation here in the Philippines. But the fact of the matter still remains that we have been trained to look to the West, to look to the global North for standards, shall we say. I mean, it says so right there in Wikipedia. Most of the global South's countries, and I quote, are commonly identified as lacking in their standard of living, which includes having lower incomes, high levels of poverty, high population rates, inadequate housing, limited educational opportunities, and deficient health systems, among other issues. Additionally, these countries' cities are characterized by poor infrastructure. So, it's all just the nasty things that they have to say about the global south are that we're poorly run, we're poor, we're sad, we're ignorant, like we have bad education systems, we have low standards of living, people can't make a lot of money. But really, the question is, though, why and how did that happen? The party line says that the global south has had very bad leadership over the past several 50, 70 years. But if we look a little bit more closely, we will make a note of the fact that a lot of European and settler colonies, so the US, New Zealand, Australia, and of course Europe as a whole, have meddled in a lot of our economic policies via international NGOs such as the UN. it is actually quite a fallacy to assume that the UN is democratic in the sense that everyone there has a say. I personally find the UN to be in need of some criticism, shall we say. I'll go into that. I'll go into that another time because, again, that'll take so long. But let it suffice to say that the G7, the group of seven, which is America, England, Italy, Germany, France, Japan, and Canada, are pretty much controlling a lot of the decisions being made in the UN, in particular when it comes to trade and economics. It's a little hard to not sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist kind of person when talking about how the global north has maintained control over the global south, because it's so clear that it almost sounds like the global north are villains. But the evidence is there. As I've said, it's really clear that the global north has America in particular, America's foreign policies, my God. So I'm going to pull out some old favorites from the conspiracy theory handbook of MK Ultra, Operation Paperclip, Operation Condor. All of them were meant to destabilize the global south countries, especially Latin America. And they ultimately were products of, yes, the Cold War, but also products of the decolonial era that occurred shortly before, or, well, co-occurred with the beginnings of the Cold War. Because, see, we here in the Global South, we continue to be trained and brainwashed into thinking that the West is the best, that, oh, if it comes from Germany, oh, it should be so very efficient and so functional, and if it comes from the US, oh, it's so high quality, or something like that. Like when it comes to institutions, oh, Oxford is the bestest, Harvard is amazing, MIT is the top of the top. And yes, the rankings do show that, but it doesn't show how we've been kept down on purpose so that they can stay on top, because resources are not being distributed equitably. The global north has robbed so much from the global south. There are articles, one in particular, I'd highly recommend reading an article written by Jason Hickel et al. About the trade that happened. I'll link it in the doobly-doo. The unequal trade that happened between the global north and the global south, and how almost $30 trillion has been stolen from the global north from the global south by the global north. And that's not to say that, like, oh, we're just so sad, innocent little lambs and victims. No. Everyone here is a complex player. Everyone here is a character in their own right. But we really do have to take into consideration the power dynamics that are at play. As former colonies, we had been thoroughly fucked over during the decolonization era, with, for instance, a lot of former French colonies, like Haiti, having to fucking pay France reparations for their loss of property. That property was people. It's just amazing how fucked up things have been because of the way things were. I'll admit, I'm getting a little angry to the point where I'm having some trouble articulating myself, so I think I should stop here. If you're interested in supporting my work, please go to christinamsaison.com/support. And, well, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. If you want to get mad at me or have corrections, please feel free to drop them in the comments too. If you're going to be rude, I'm going to erase those comments. But I really want this to be the start of a conversation around, global global South solidarity. Because we, as people from the global South, need to talk about how we can work together, not to defeat the global North, but to retain ourselves, to maintain survival, like a sense of homeostasis. Because right now, Europe, America in particular, seems to be kind of imploding. I think, it's just kind of collapsing in and of itself. So once that's gone, like for example, the removal of the USAID support system in a lot of places revealed how America had meddled in a lot of African policies. For example, how aid in general is actually just a noose. It's blackmail, essentially, for a lot of countries. And yes, poor leadership is very much an issue. I mean, I'm from the Philippines. We have Marcos Jr. in the presidency. And if you've heard of Ferdinand Marcos Sr., then you know that it was one of the most amazingly horrible kleptocracies in the history of the planet. But they were backed by the Americans. A lot of the poor leaders that have continued to destabilize a lot of global South countries have support from global North countries because it benefits them. It benefits their economic interests. A lot of the loans, for instance, that IMF and the World Bank extend to countries in the global South are conditioned upon the promotion of neoliberal policies that make it easier for big corporations to take over what should be public utilities like electricity. Anyway, I was supposed to stop and I kept on going, so I will stop for real now. Again, if you want to support my work, go to christinamsaison.com/support and free Palestine, free Sudan, free the Congo, free US Papua, and free yourself. Take care. I'll see you next time.